What is going on, everyone? It is a wonderful Thursday outside as SEC play for South Carolina baseball is officially a little over 24 hours away. Hope you guys are all doing well. My name is Jack Veltri. I will be your host for today, and I am joined by my co-host, former South Carolina right-handed pitcher and 2010 College World Series champion. He's back again for the second week. I decided to let him back on. My good friend, Ethan Carter. Ethan, what's going on, man?
Not much, Jack. Happy to be here. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, man, dude. I just got back from – we were texting yesterday about being in Nashville for the SEC tournament. I just got back. I want to say maybe around like 3 o'clock because Maneri had his press conference at 3, and I'm like, all right, I got to be there. And I'm like, looking at my phone. I left at 7 this morning from Nashville after South Carolina men's basketball lost to Arkansas. I'm like looking at my GPS, and I'm like, all right, I'm leaving at 7. I'm going to get there at like 2:30. I stopped at Buc-ee's, and then the time kept switching because there was a little bit of traffic, and then there wasn't. And it goes back and forth between like 3:05, 2:50, and I'm like, shoot, man, if I'm late to this, I'm not going to especially
Well,
drive the whole way.
That's why you're one of the best to cover the Gamecocks there, Jack. That's the dedication that's required for it.
The dedication. So I made it back with like 10 minutes to spare, went straight to Founders, man, and we're here now. So it's been a long few days, and but I'm ready to talk some baseball.
Absolutely.
Glad men's basketball season's kind of, unless they randomly make the NIT, it should be the season should be on the back burner, and like we're getting ready for the transfer portal and whatnot. But that is not what today's about. We're talking some Gamecock baseball as the Gamecocks picked up a 7-1 win over Georgia State last night, and obviously have a huge series against Oklahoma this weekend. But before we get going, got to talk to you guys real quick about our main presenting sponsor. Right above me here, if you're watching live, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you're in the market to buy a home or you just need help with your mortgage and you have no clue where to begin, got good news for you. Clint is your guy to get in contact with. He'll take you through the process step by step and help you out along the way. And he's been in the mortgage industry for more than 20 years. He's a lifelong Gamecock fan. He's also a longtime supporter of Gamecock Central, and he's always been the presenting sponsor above me here and Ethan of our GC Live program. So if you're interested, give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or you can go to clinthammond.com for more info. All right, enough chit-chat. Time to get down to business. Good ball game yesterday for South Carolina. What are your initial thoughts from the 7-1 win over Georgia State?
I thought Jarvis looked great. He turned in another quality performance. Kind of peeking ahead to what we're going to talk about a little bit later. But Coach Maneri kind of foreshadowed what the change and the rotation might be this weekend, getting Becker some work last night, and then we had the one big inning that we've seen here the last going back to the weekend series in Morehead State, having that one big inning kind of capped off by Jordan Carrion's bases clearing double to score to 3 runs. So I thought it was another good game, a nice tune up before we get rocking and rolling here, taking on OU.
I really liked what Paul had to say yesterday about Jarvis Evans and the what South Carolina now has seemingly after he pitched 7 innings against Citadel last week, and then he pitches 5 innings of 1-run ball yesterday. You know this about as well as anyone. And if you go back to last year, you're going to need an extra starter down the stretch, like midweek games. You're gonna need someone to pitch. Jarvis is that guy right now, and there's gonna be some big midweek games coming up with North Carolina here in a few weeks. You have Charleston next week at Segra. You have Presbyterian coming to town relatively soon. You're gonna have some big midweek games, but later in the year, as we all well know, SEC tournament play comes around. You might run out of pitching, and if you don't have enough pitching to make it through a few days in Hoover, your chances of winning the SEC tournament are that much more difficult. That's why I think South Carolina last year kind of ran out of gas when you look at those 2 games against LSU. I mean, you're pitching the most random guys, your last resort options, if you will. So having a guy like Jarvis as reliable as he's looked right now, he's more than capable, I think, of being a weekend starter if you needed him to be that at some point. But right now, he's a great midweek guy to have. I think he's your midweek guy for the foreseeable future. And when you have to get into that situation of playing multiple games over multiple days in a row, you will need that type of pitcher on the mound.
For sure. No, I mean, it's kind of like what we talked about last week. Those midweek games are important. You don't want to give those away. So when you have somebody like Jarvis that can come in and give you quality starts, and that way you're not having to dip too deep into your weekend pen. You can get guys, some guys that might not get the work on a weekend, they can get an inning here or there. Or, if you have somebody that, throws all three games on the weekend or 2 out of 3, and they go 4 or 5 innings over the course of the weekend, you're not having to then dip into them on a midweek. You're cutting down the number of outs you're asking your bullpen to get, and that's so valuable when it comes down to the end of the year. Guys run out of gas. I know we have a more veteran team than most. I was kind of going through it last night, while watching the game, just kind of going through the roster, and it's like, it just dawns on you when you see it, written out. It's like, we do have a pretty veteran team, but still, walls are hit. I know we got some guys transferred in and play as much, previous places. So like, when you make those deep runs and you get into SEC tournament, you get into regional, hopefully super regional, and then especially Omaha, having that depth and having guys not kind of wear out, at that halfway 2/3 of the way point, is just invaluable.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Like, again, pitching, I think, as you mentioned before, it wins weekend series for you, and I think it also wins championships. Like, offense is great and all, but if you can't get outs, you can't play good defense, you're kind of screwed. And luckily, South Carolina has both those things. I will ask, I noticed looking at the box score from yesterday while covering basketball and stuff, and we've seen this a few times with Mainieri, he's really he's squeezed out every ounce of the game as he can. Jarvis pitches 5 innings. Matthew Becker came in, pitched an inning. Ryder Garino pitched an inning. And then over the final 2 innings, I thought it was fascinating how he was able to get 5 different pitchers in there. Ashton Crowther got 1 out. Roman Kimball got 1 out. Aiden Palmer got 1 out. Zach Russell was fortunate to get 2 outs. And Brendan Sweeney, keep in mind, this is your closer in a 6-run game, getting 1 out in the 9th to end it. I mean, I can't even imagine sitting in that press box yesterday, watching just how quick the game's probably moving. And then it's just like, man, you probably took an hour to get through the final few innings of the game. I mean, it's crazy to think how many pitchers were used in the final 2 innings.
Yeah, no, and it's not ideal, but I love
this is the way to like comment. Spreading the love, I guess, in the wealth.
Exactly. No, I love that comment from EXO there, but it's a tough watch, but it's also, it's good for some of those guys to get game, experience, something, I'm sure we'll talk about. The roster gets cut down this weekend. Not everybody's going to make the weekend roster. So, some of these guys that might not, be active this weekend are able to get a little bit of work in, against live hitters. And, while it can be frustrating and you can be looking at your watch and be like, all right, let's speed this along. Let's get to the end. To your point, so it's a 6-run game, and it never felt much closer than that. But it is, it is valuable for those guys to get those, because you never know when they might need to be called upon, because Jarvis has a start where he throws a lot of pitches, only gets 3 innings, and then we are digging a little bit deeper into that bullpen. So it's good to get those guys a couple. I guess a couple batters is pretty apt for a few of those guys.
It's insane because we've seen this happen so many times this year, where it's like he's just like Mainieri is just willingly like taking guys out and stuff after like 1 batter late in the game. It's like a 14-1 game. It's like I understand wanting to get other guys in there. But man, it's so tedious when he's like, he just went out to the mound a second ago and now he's already come back out. But you're right. I mean, look, you're going to need pitching down the stretch here in the SEC when maybe you're getting a blown out one game. I don't know. Like maybe you're getting blown out in a random game and you just need to throw someone in there. This is where you can get those guys in there and get them experience. And as we mentioned earlier, the SEC tournament is that time of year where no pitcher is not going to throw. You are going to be pitching at some point over that week. And it's the same deal for the NCAA tournament's a little bit different, I would say.
Yeah, if you get caught in that loser's bracket, then yeah, anybody that's on the roster, yeah.
Like the SEC tournament, all 16 teams are going to be there. Like you could lose one game and that be it. I mean, we'll see what happens for South Carolina this year and how it'll work, but it's never an issue to have more pitching.
No, not at all. Like, I mean, because SEC tournament starts on Wednesday during the week, Yeah. So your weekend guys are not going to throw those. If you're at that front half of the week, your weekend guys aren't throwing. So you've got to get guys that are ready to get there. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how the bullpen management kind of works out now that we're getting into, hearing Coach Maneri talk, I heard some of his talking today and, leading up to, like, he's excited for this weekend and these weekends coming up. And I'm interested to see, where, how the managing style changes a little bit now that, these are the games he seems to be very, very, excited about.
Let's not beat around the bush anymore. You mentioned the weekend, and again, South Carolina picks up a 7-1 win over Georgia State on Wednesday at Founders Park to move to 15-3 on the year. And this is the weekend where you know better than anyone. I think this is the weekend you start to really separate the boys from the men and kind of figure out who are the best teams in the SEC. We know the story this year. It's a difficult conference, just like it is in every other sport. And South Carolina is picked near the bottom of the totem pole in the preseason rankings and stuff. I mean, it is what it is. And South Carolina's now got a chance to go out here and prove it, what they can do and how far they've come since getting swept by Clemson and what kind of progress they've made as number 12 Oklahoma comes to town. Here is Paul Maneri talking about the team's readiness for this weekend and just how things are looking in general.
Why is it so hard to win a college baseball game? But it is. It just is. The other team gets scholarships. The other team has good players. The other team has good coaches. They care about their program. There's no givens. There's no gimmies. So you just got to – I think we're ready. I think we're as ready as we'll ever be. And now we just got to go out there and play fearless and play with confidence and meet the challenge and compete as hard as we can each and every day and turn the page when that game's over and get ready for the next one. Why is it?
All right. So that is what head coach Paul Maneri had to say about the team's readiness for this weekend. And, man, it's the first weekend of SEC play. I'm kind of just shocked it's already here. Like, the season, it literally feels like opening day was just yesterday, man. And, like, we're already in SEC play. It's just it's crazy. So, you know it better than anyone, pitching at South Carolina and competing in this conference. I mean, how much different really is it, the vibe in SEC play versus random weekend series and midweek games?
No, there's just a certain electricity you feel throughout, Founders and Ray Tanner Park. There's just it's hard to describe. It's getting the daylight's staying around a little bit longer now, but when 7 o'clock hits and the lights come on, it's different. And I've been noticing here there hasn't been as many turnouts for the midweek. It's early in the year, stuff like that. But I know you're going to play something Ethan Petrie said earlier today, but I think it's real important for the fans to come out there and pack the park, because it is such the players feed off that so much, and it is when it's these, all the games matter, all the games count, but like these are the ones that you really start stacking up, and these are the ones that are used when it comes to your seeding in the tournament. Are you going to host? These are the kind of weekends that get you those host spots, and you feel it this early in the season.
Totally. And again, you have a really good Oklahoma team coming into town. Their only loss this season, as they're 15-1 on the year, only loss this year came to a pretty solid Dallas Baptist team, and they got run ruled by them. But other than that, man, they've been really solid this year, and most recently just swept Sam Houston State. They went out to Round Rock, Texas, to compete in one of those tournaments, and they got ranked wins over Virginia and Oregon State. So it's not like they haven't played anybody. Like, they played some teams, but again, you really don't know what you really have, I don't think, until you get to this point in the season. And it's like, all right, like whatever happened before really doesn't matter. Like, you could be, in South Carolina's case, you're pretty happy being 15-3, but you could also be in a position where, you were struggling, and then something just flips when SEC play gets going. But you're right, man. You're going to need a good crowd coming out this weekend. And that brings me to the next audio clip that we got here. Here is Ethan Petrie. I asked him earlier today about, Paul mentioned that there's like a super regional feel to these weekend series. We'll kind of hit on that after this clip here. But here's what Ethan kind of had to say about that and just what he hopes for this weekend.
He's ready. I think you can say it as a super regional, depending on the crowd and everything. If the crowd shows out and brings a lot of energy, I know everybody's on spring break right now, but I would love to see a packed out Founders against Oklahoma. Show them what the really SEC is really about. So we pack out the crowd here, intimidate them a little bit. They've never seen a crowd like that. I'm sure probably maybe Texas. Then when they go to Texas, but that's about it. But I think we have a good crowd. It intimidates Oklahoma for the SEC. I think.
So, yeah, again, that is what Ethan Petrie had to say just about, what his hope is for the crowd this weekend. And again, he's right. Like, it's spring break this week for South Carolina and stuff. So, understandable. It might not be the biggest crowd, but, man, the weather's going to be great this weekend. It's still early in the year to where it's like you don't know what you really have yet. Like, yes, they got swept by Clemson. And, yes, that's all that anyone really talks about. Like, I see it all the time on Twitter and message boards and stuff that, all right, well, they beat this random team, Georgia State. All right, well, that doesn't really count, doesn't really matter. So, which I disagree with, because I think every game counts a lot, even though it's not your big time, big name opponent. Just because you don't know anything about the team doesn't mean it makes the game meaningless. You know what I mean? So this weekend's huge, and it gives South Carolina a chance to prove some people wrong and show that they mean business.
Yeah, no, I mean, because guess what? You go and drop one of those games, then it's held against you. It's one of those there that, you drop the midweek, and it's like, oh my gosh, all right. And they've lost, so, I'm with you. All the games matter. But yeah, I mean, this is where the rubber hits the road. You find out kind of where you stack up against, to going back to what you were saying earlier, this is the premier conference in the country, up and down the conference, there's not going to be really an off weekend. You could, any weekend you could get swept. And I don't think you can say that in most conferences. No matter who you are, top to bottom, you could go out there and drop 3 in a row if you don't come with your A game. So I think this is a real opportunity for our guys to, and I think they found something, to going back to what you were saying earlier. They play such good defense. I know they had a couple gaffes, and I think it was Saturday, Morehead State.
Yeah,
but I mean, for the most part, I mean, these guys, they play great defense. The pitching's been there, and I think the offense is starting to figure things out. I think exerting Jordan Carey on into that lineup has been a real win. I think Coach Maneri, taken, being able to see, give that guy a chance, and he sees it, a veteran guy from Florida State who's been in big series like this. So I think this is really, this goes back to, the experience of this team, I think is going to serve these guys well, that they're not going to get overwhelmed by, perhaps the moment, or the not really the moment, but by the stage. They're not going to get overwhelmed by it because a lot of these guys have been here. They've played in big games, and I think that it's going to serve them well, especially early on. And go back to something you said last week. I think it's really good for this team to have the first SEC series at home, and especially for a team having traveled across the country.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's huge. Like, again, Oklahoma will be probably already here by now, and if it's, normally whenever you guys would travel on the road, and I think it's been the same for South Carolina in general now, you guys always travel in the day before and have practice at the opposing team stadium, right?
Yep. Yeah. We would, depending on how far it was, we'd generally get up, Thursday morning, we'd hop on the bus, Thursday morning, anywhere between 8 and 9 o'clock, and then we'd hit the road, and then we normally get there. We'd have a lunch for us that box lunch for us that we'd have, and then we'd get to wherever we're going between. We'd get probably between 4 and 7, depending on how far it was, and generally we went straight to the field. Sometimes if we got there early, we'd swing by the hotel, but generally we'd go straight to the field. We'd pop off. We'd get a stretch. Pitchers would get out there. We'll get flat grounds in. Maybe the Sunday guy needs to throw a pen. And then it's BP and just getting your bodies loose, and then back to the hotel, get showered, get dinner, and then you're hanging out, getting ready, preparing for the weekend, going over those scouting reports.
And it's basically a cross country flight to Oklahoma. Like, that's not a short flight.
No.
Look, they're getting into town the day before, and we'll see what the weather looks like this weekend. There is a possibility there could be a doubleheader at some point this weekend because the weather on Sunday doesn't look great.
Yep.
And so I hope we find out relatively soon that if it's Friday doubleheader, great. If it's Saturday, all right, well, at least we know. So we'll see how that kind of impacts things. And this is also Oklahoma's first ever SEC series. Like,
yep.
They are coming from the Big 12, and it's baseball is that one sport where it's like the competition, I feel like, maybe is different in some cases, but with the SEC compared to the Big 12, I think it's like hands down, not even really a comparison. SEC,
it's night and day.
Yeah, the SEC is just something else, man. And again, South Carolina being at home this weekend, I'd feel much worse about the situation this weekend if they had to go on the road to OU this weekend, and that's a long flight, man. And I know the football team went out there for the first time and handled their business and dominant. That game was over within the first 5 minutes.
Yep.
You hope it's not that this weekend for South Carolina. You hope they're able to, just dominate the whole way and not have to, deal with Oklahoma being what they've been all year. But again, I think South Carolina really does benefit from being at home. And speaking of which, got a question here from Big Red in the chat. And again, drop any questions you guys have for us throughout the show here. But they ask, which will be a bigger test for Carolina? This weekend's series with Oklahoma or next week with College of Charleston?
I think this weekend. I think this weekend will be a good measuring stick with Oklahoma. Like Jack said, they're number 12 in the country. They're a good baseball team. They're a good program. I had my least favorite baseball moment on a baseball field against Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So they're a good program. So they do it the right way. So I think this weekend is a bigger test for them as far as kind of seeing where you are amongst the SEC hierarchy to see, or middle of the pack. Are we going to be towards the top half competing for a title and hopefully a hosting spot? So I'd love to hear what you think on that.
And I agree with you on that, but I'll give the flip side of the coin here and why the Charleston game on Tuesday at Segra Park could be a big test. Maybe definitely not as big as an SEC series, but think about it this way. Let's say South Carolina hypothetically lost the series this weekend, or God forbid they get swept by Oklahoma. You're going to have the fan base in a panic attack, like freaking out, season's over, all this nonsense. And then, you get into that midweek game, and we just saw it with softball over, yet like 2 days ago when they got swept, ironically, by Oklahoma and then they go out here and drop a midweek game against Coastal Carolina. So in College of Charleston, they're a good baseball program. You know Holbrook. I mean, good coach. They got snubbed last year from the NCAA tournament with their 40-plus wins. That's going to be a challenge. And they were a challenge when South Carolina had to face them back in the fall in a scrimmage out there at Riley Park in Charleston. So I think that in itself, if you get in a situation where whether you win the series or you lose it or you get swept or whatever the case might be, that midweek game, that can always come up on you, I think, and kind of be like I don't know how to describe it, but kind of like a trap game, if you will.
Yeah, no, I see that, and definitely, this is Coach Holbrook. I know, he has those guys, well prepared over there, and he's just wonderful coach, and he's going to have those guys ready. He's going to have those guys pumped up, and whatever he has to say to get those guys playing all firing on all cylinders. I think you're going to get College Charleston's best punch on Tuesday. So yeah, coming out of what's going to be by all intents and purposes a very good weekend. Against Oklahoma, or a very tough weekend. It's going to be, I expect it to be a competitive series, and that you can't exhale on Monday. You've got to come to the park on Monday and get your rehab, get in the training room, get in the weight room, do your exercise, and then be ready to go right back into the midweek.
Yeah, and then you get to go to Fayetteville, Arkansas after that, and that's going to be talk about a long flight for South Carolina. That's going to be a long one.
That is, I'll save it for next week. I'll save it for next week when we talk about Arkansas. We'll stick to Oklahoma, but Fayetteville is a place, man.
Oh man, I'm going out there for the first time next weekend, man. I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time, man. But let's talk about the weekend rotation, because obviously we've kind of held off on it a little bit, and it is in the title of the stream here. There is a change to the rotation. Brandon Stone will now be starting on Friday for the Gamecocks, as Matthew Becker, as we mentioned before, has moved to the bullpen. So I don't think it's a solidified thing for it's going to be like this every single week. Things are always changing with this baseball program. This is the third different Friday night starter the Gamecocks have had this year. SQ was your Friday guy to begin the year. Then he kind of got hurt, so he moved back to Sunday, and that's where he's been for the last few weekends here. Becker moved to Friday, got hit around against Clemson, had a lot of walks, and then same deal kind of happened against Morehead State. So you hope Becker can kind of do well in the bullpen, and then kind of maybe find his way back into the rotation. Again, that adds another arm that you can potentially start in one of those maybe early SEC tournament games, and you feel really good about having a guy like Matt out there to pitch. But ultimately, Stone, I think, earned this role just based on the way he pitched alone. I mean, you look at it, 23 strikeouts, 3 walks over the 18 and 2/3 innings he's pitched this year out of relief. And he's kind of saved South Carolina's bullpen in these last 2 Friday games where Becker really can't provide much length. And then Stone comes in and kind of shoves for the most part. He gives up maybe 1 or 2 mistakes, but other than that, he gives you a chance to win the ball game.
Yeah, no, I think Brandon definitely earned that spot. I was a little surprised that Coach moved him to Friday instead of kind of moving everybody back up a day, but I get it. He's got I know with Dylan, you don't want to do too much. You kind of moved him back after the back stuff. So, you kind of want to get him into more of a routine again and keep him where he's at. And then, I think Jake, Brandon and Jake have a strong, argument for the 2 best pitchers that the team's seen this year. And so I was a little surprised that we didn't just move up, but I mean, it makes sense. I think, you're able to slot Brandon in because he has been kind of that Swiss Army knife to where he hasn't had a defined role where it's pretty easy to just go ahead and slot him into Friday and not have it be, too many things changing, too many moving parts where you got to, move everyone else because of the one. You're going to keep the other two guys kind of where they are and then just kind of slot Brandon into that Friday role.
And it makes sense because, again, like he's pitched the last 2 Fridays. So hypothetically, in a way, it's kind of like he's on regular rest since he hasn't pitched since last Friday. But that does lead into 2 interesting things that Paul did have to say today. Number one, on Stone, why he's starting on Friday. And then we'll dive into the Saturday and Sunday spots in the rotation. But here's what Paul Mainieri did have to say about Brandon Stone and why he is starting on Friday.
Well, I mean, he's been pitching great. Every time we run him out there, he's been really outstanding. Throws a lot of strikes. He's got a good repertoire of pitches. He's got a lot of self-confidence. He just looks like a guy that could handle the Friday night situation and everything that comes with it. I have a lot of confidence in him. I think our team has a lot of confidence in him. Well,
so again, that is what Paul Mainieri had to say about why Brandon Stone is starting on Friday. And it makes sense from the standpoint of, the rest factor of it. I know that's pitchers are, freaks of nature in terms of like their routine and stuff, right? Like their habits are what they are. And it as a pitcher, like, it is what it is. So ideally, I think I would have liked to see Jake on Friday too. But again, he's pitched very well on Saturday. Dylan's pitched well on Sunday, it seems. Why mess with that? And, we'll dive into the other audio clip real quick before we actually get rolling into it, just since it makes sense. But, again, here's what Paul Mainieri did have to say about the Saturday spot and why Jake McCoy is still pitching on Saturday compared to maybe earning the Friday spot.
We discussed all the possibilities, Jack. But I think Jake is really comfortable in that slot there. And the middle game is just such an important game. There's been years where I've pitched our best guy on Saturday. When you think about it, if you win on Friday night, now Saturday's game can win the series for you. If you lose on Friday night, the Saturday game can get you back to even. So, for me, there's almost no difference between Friday or Saturday in terms of the importance of the games, listen, there's all 30 games are important. Sunday's as important as Friday and Saturday. But I know, the way it works in a super regional is the way I just described it. So I like to treat every weekend series like it is a super regional. And if you're fortunate enough to get to that point later on in the season, then I think your players are kind of accustomed to that whole attitude, one game at a time. But, we all know that on Friday night it's going to be a tremendous challenge in this league, or in the super regional. You're going to face a great pitcher. That's just the way it is. And if you may win, you may not win. But if you don't, you better have a really great one going on Saturday. Yeah, we discussed all.
Yeah.
So again, I promise we don't sit here just blank staring at the screen and if you don't have the audio on, then you're like, what are these guys doing? So again, some of these Mainieri, luckily he's been pretty good about not giving you like a 10-minute answer. Like when he first got here, man, I mean, the dude probably answered like 6 questions in his opening press conference. It was like a 10-minute answer piece. He's gotten so much better at it, so I give him major props for that. But again, that was probably like the longest answer to a question he's given in these audio clips that we pulled. But anyway, so in case you're just now joining us again, Brandon Stone starting Friday, Jake McCoy Saturday, Dylan Eskew Sunday. I mean, I think I like the rotation, man. Like we talked about before, I think it looks good, and it gives you the best chance to win the series this weekend. And I'm really pumped to see what Brandon does on Friday. But if you lose that Friday game, in what's going to be a pitcher's duel, since Oklahoma's got some dudes as well, like Mainieri said, having a guy like McCoy and then Eskew right behind him gives you a chance. It's a win the series still.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to go about it. You can set your weekend rotation, when you have first, bona fide first round pick, Friday guy. And then, but I've been a part of teams where, you put your best guy or your guy with the best stuff on Saturday. You kind of give somebody that has that more bulldog mentality. And not saying that because I went back and rewatched Jake's outing against Morehead State over the weekend. I think I was when I was texting with you, I did that on Tuesday because I wanted to go back because I remembered it and it was just like something just stuck out, and it was, he had the two walks that after being ahead in the count that kind of did him in that start. But I mean, before those two walks, electric stuff, and that. To Coach's point, that can be a real weapon on a Saturday when you can take the series or you even the series back up. So having your guy with the quote unquote best stuff of the staff is a real nice thing to have on Saturday, especially if you have a guy on Friday like Brandon's been, who's consistent, throw strikes, not putting guys on base, giving free 90s, and can give your bullpen a little bit of a breather so that Jake can go out there and not worry about being economical with this pitch count. He's a strikeout pitcher. He misses bats. He's not of course he's looking for weak contact, but his profile isn't pitching to weak contact. His pitching profile is I'm pitching to miss bats. So you can kind of there are going to be days where Jake can go out there and give you 7-8 innings, but there's going to be days where Jake has a great outing, but it's 4 2/3, 5 1/3, and you've really got to kind of rely on that bullpen to hopefully bring his start home. So I like what Coach has done with the weekend rotation, and I think Dylan's great on Sunday. Really, the only question would be Brandon or Jake on Friday. And that's just, whatever floats your boat, whatever your flavor of ice cream is, there's not a bad answer.
No, there really isn't, man. Like you could literally put these names in a random generator.
Yeah.
Just let it spit out. And I think you're cool with whatever, but I really do like, number one, you're right about the Saturday thing because sometimes you do need to throw your best pitcher on Saturday. Cause if you win that game one, you have a chance to win the series on Saturday, and whatever happens Sunday, like it's not irrelevant. You'd like to sweep the series, but if you lose on Sunday, right, so what? Just don't. The rule of thumb seems to be don't get swept on the road and win your series at home. You do that, you will be fine. But again, McCoy on Saturday gives you having him and Stone, however that order will look throughout the rest of the year, they will give you a chance to win each time out. And if you get SQ against Clemson, that type of outing, you're going to be you could have a chance to sweep any weekend with
exactly.
Those. But again, if you get the SQ that we have seen time and time again in the past, and last weekend against Morehead State, he didn't pitch bad, didn't give up a run, only gave up one hit, but it was a grind to get through 3 innings and pitch into the fourth because he had 4 walks and a hit by pitch. So I like the rotation, like what they got. Got a question here from Big Red again, asking, does the changes in the pitching rotation speak more to the competitiveness of the pitchers or Coach Maneri figuring out his own groove with the team?
I think a little bit of both, to be quite honest. This is a brand new group for him. So, he's Coach hasn't been in a dugout the last couple of years. So I'm sure it's a little bit of both for him figuring out what kind of pulse of the team is. But I think it speaks to just how freaking good Brandon's been this year. I think, I don't think you can take, you can't say it strongly enough how good he's been to really force the issue or, force himself into that conversation. If he'd been, okay, then yeah, he's a great weapon out of the pen. You can use him in any different way, but I mean, he's really thrown well enough that it's kind of undeniable.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And, I think I mentioned this to you when we were kind of going over the show in text and whatnot. I think I asked you, and if I didn't, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Does he remind you of anyone on the mound that you either played with or watched against, or shoot, even now in the watching, the pros or whatever.
I mean, he's a big, tall, right-handed player wearing number 32. That's low 90s and a good slider. So I like to think that he reminds me a little bit of me. But
I can see it.
Yeah, no, not. I mean, there's a quote that Ethan had today. Petrie had. Where he's talking about kind of that Will Sanders presence on the mound. And, I know they have a little bit different, pitching profiles, I guess is the best way to say it. But I just think kind of the presence he provides there is pretty similar. I think that's it's more of a vibes comp than a stuff comp. But I think, as far as, of recent guys, he's kind of the first one I think of as far as, kind of reminding me of who that is.
And it's ironic that both him and Will have worn 32. So,
no, it's been great. It's been great, being able to watch a few years and be like, good, big righty on the mound wearing number 32. I wish I threw as hard as those guys, but
but yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Petrie. Here's what Ethan had to say about the comparison, like of how he kind of views Stone and what he's seen. Because again, he's faced him in the fall. He's seen him, pitching on the mound these last few weeks. Here's the firsthand perspective from Ethan.
He's ready. Yeah, he's a big guy. He's big, physical. He's a presence on the mound. And I think, having a Friday guy with that kind of presence, it reminds me of almost a Will Sanders kind of, presence on the mound. I think he's got a really good sinker, and he's starting to throw the four seam more, and his breaking ball is very elite. And I think I call him an adrenaline junkie because his stuff played a lot better during the games, when he's facing another opponent than facing us, because sometimes it's hard to face, each other and constantly, or just kind of get bored of it. And I think when he gets on the mound versus another team, he's a competitor. He's just like, that's all you can describe him as, a competitor on the mound, and I think he's going to be great for us on Friday night.
So again, that is what Ethan Petrie had to say, giving a Will Sanders comp, if you will, for Brandon Stone. And again, tall, lanky right-hander, a little bit of a weird motion, does remind me of you a little bit. But going to focus a little bit more on the weekend in general now, let's dive a little bit into.
Before we do, I do have one thing, kind of what Ethan said there. That if I have one concern about Brandon this weekend is being a little too jacked up for Friday.
That's a good point.
Yes. That is something that can't be dismissed. I think, to Ethan's point, I think he does better. The more adrenaline that there is there, but there is something to be said about first weekend starting. It's Friday night. First game of the SEC. Lights will be on. Should be a pretty packed house with good energy. Is think the biggest thing is getting Brandon through that first inning. I expect I had to guess we're going to see a couple fastballs high in the first inning.
Might be a walk or two.
Maybe an overthrown slider here or there. Kind of maybe spike one here or there. But I think if Brandon can get through that first inning relatively clean, then I think he'll settle in and it will be a smooth outing. But I think that's going to be the biggest thing, and that's where having such a good defense that they've had this year is really going to help. Is he generally fills the zone up. Just stick with that plan and take that forward.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how he handles the Friday night role. It's also going to be interesting to see where Matthew Becker kind of fits into the picture here. And again, just because he's not in the weekend rotation right now does not mean his role is gone and everything's changed for him. That's not the case. He's
going to throw at least 3 innings this weekend.
He might pitch twice this weekend, man. Like, that is what you're relying on him to do. Because look, he hasn't provided you much length lately, but he can give you those innings like he did the other day. Giving 1 inning, that's it. That's all you need, and then do that again twice over the weekend.
Exactly. No, for sure. No, like I said, he's going to pitch, and and he knows that. So I don't think I'm sure part of him wishes he was still starting, but he also knows he's going to pitch big innings for this team. So I think it's a pretty quick, you take the news, you file it away. And if anything, what I hope is he uses as just fuel, for the rest of the year. But he's going to pitch. He's going to be, if not the first guy out of the pen, he's going to be one of your high leverage guys. So I don't have any, worries with Matthew. I think he's going to take it in stride and use it as fuel to propel him through the rest of the year.
Definitely. And I have no doubt we will be seeing him pitch probably as a starter again this season because, again, baseball is just so unpredictable to where it's like guys can get hurt, guys can just stink it up on the mound, and you never know when your number is going to be called.
Yep.
So let's look into the weekend, man. 3 games set. Friday, first pitch, 7 p.m. Weather permitting, Saturday, 4 o'clock, and then Sunday, I believe it's 1:30. I'm going to just double check, but it's it's a 1:30 game on Sunday. So if they play all 3, 1 game a day, that's great. Double headers kind of always mix things or change things up a little bit to where it's like it's hard to sweep a doubleheader. I would say not impossible. South Carolina did it last year against Vanderbilt, but it's going to be tough in that case. So I'll ask, man, how do you see this weekend going? What's the key for the weekend, and who's got to show up?
I'm optimistic about this weekend. I think again, I don't think you can discount. And I don't think Oklahoma's going to be overwhelmed by I don't think they're going to shrink from the weekend. I think it's going to be more of or shrink from the spotlight. I think it's going to be more of our guys really rising to the occasion. I think they've got a little more swagger in the lineup now. I think Jordan Carrion has just really changed the feel of this lineup. And he just has a certain swagger about him that I think this team wasn't it's enhanced ever. I think he's a good fire starter. He doesn't take away, he gives out. Guys can feed off him. So I think Jordan's going to be big in this series. I think keeping Evan Stone rolling because I think the things you can count on are Nathan Hall's going to get on base and Ethan Petrie is going to at least deliver 1 big hit. So I think those things you can pencil in those things each weekend. I think I'd be interested in your opinion on this. You've watched the guys a little more closely than I have, the last few years. How, for as veteran as team is, KJ Scobie getting his first taste of SEC baseball, being a freshman out there. He's one to kind of watch for as far as how he reacts to at bats. Maybe he might hit a rough stretch for these first couple weekends and how he really responds and reacts to that. But I think the guys keep your eye on outside of the big two is Jordan Carrion and Evan Stone.
No, definitely, I agree. And do you have a prediction for how the series is going to go?
I think we're gonna take 2 out of 3. I think they're going to win Saturday. I feel good about any chance. I'm going to take Jake McCoy Saturday against pretty much every other Saturday starter in the conference this year. I just feel, and of course he's not going to win every single Saturday, but I feel as good with him on the mound as I do anyone probably since Will Sanders. So I love the way he pitches. I think he has a plan out there with the stuff. So I think they win Saturday, and then I think either Dylan or Brandon provides the length they need, and this offense has been relying on big innings the last few games, and I think that they found something there. It may seem like, oh, well, what if the big inning doesn't come? Well, the big innings are more likely to happen than you scoring 1 to 2 runs over 4 innings. You're much more likely to put up a crooked number than a bunch of single numbers. So I like the way the offense is trending. I think they really feed off of each other. They pass the bat back. And I think we take 2 out of 3. I don't think we're going to sweep. I think Oklahoma is too good of a team to sweep. Especially this early in the season. But I think we take 2 out of 3 from them.
I don't think anyone's sweeping this weekend. I think that's if anyone's going to sweep this weekend, and this may not be a popular opinion. I think it'd be Oklahoma sweeping this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Just because Oklahoma is, again, the ranking is just a number, but like they are a very good team. And the one thing I do worry about with this South Carolina team, and I'll get my prediction in a second, is you mentioned Petrie, you mentioned Hall, other guys need to step up, but are they going to? That's the main thing, because we have seen this offense go into a rut at times. We saw what happened against Clemson and their ability to not get the big hits when it matters. Like that series, you hope that they just flushed it, they learn from it, and they show up like a different team. It does help that this series is in Columbia. But, man, I know the weather's going to be nicer out. But, man, you really need to kind of, like, set the tone early this weekend, get a big hit. And I do think it's going to come from Petrie or Hall. But I will say, man, I'm gonna agree with you on this. A guy I'm watching for this weekend to continue hitting the ball and playing as well as he is. He does everything right, it feels like, is Jordan Carrion. What does he do at the bottom of the order for you? Well, let me tell you, he's putting the ball in play. He's probably your best bunter on the team. He's quick, and he has a really nice glove in the field at second base, providing everything that has worked so well for him to take the starting job at second base pretty swiftly here from Nolan Naraki within a few games. And it doesn't look like that job is going to be up for sale anytime soon. So he's able to, if he gets on base, that flips the lineup over to where you got Hall, someone hitting the second spot, and then Petrie, which I think Petrie should be hitting second. That's a discussion for another day.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I think it's got to happen, man. Give Petrie more at bats. Don't have someone that is going. It's the 2 spot in the lineup just changes so often to where it's like, man, that one guy might strike out or something with Hall in first, and then you got Petrie up. And there's already one out. And you hit into double play, inning over. Like that. Go ahead.
No. I'm in total agreement because what I've noticed from coaches, we're playing a little bit of small ball, the 2 holes button a little bit. You get in these series with these kind of teams, they're just going to pitch around them. They're going to happily give him first base versus, hoping that it's, versus it being a 2-0 game versus, okay, well, it's first and second with 1 out, and we're going to hope to roll a ground ball here. So I think getting Ethan up into that 2 hole is necessary at some point. But honestly, I hope that it's, they play well enough to where coach just leaves it as is and they're winning a bunch of games. But I think for the long-term health of the lineup, I think Ethan and Nathan need to be kind of stacked there. And then, again, somebody else in the lineup just, keeps stepping up, keeps coming up with the big hit.
Yeah. And so that's why I worry a little bit, but we'll see. I think this team has the pitching and the defense to win any series out there. It's just, again, are they going to be able to hit? So that brings me into my point with the predictions. And I think the series will probably go like this if it were, if I'm betting on it. Friday, I think it's going to be a pitcher's duel, 2 best arms in the mound, Stone. And, for Oklahoma, they're going to have, let me look up who it was. I have the name, on my mind, and then Kyson Witherspoon.
Yeah.
I mean, this dude's he's already got a shutout this year, which has been unreal, man. I mean, 1.17 ERA over 23 innings, 40 strikeouts, 5 walks, disgusting. Guy's their best pitcher on the team, hands down. And, I mean, it's just nasty. So I think Friday you're going to lose, unfortunately. And, Big Red brings up the question here, is winning game 1 crucial to winning the series? Yes and no, because if you lose game 1, you got to win the next 2 to win the series. But it's been done before. And I think it could be done again this weekend, which is why, again, I think Friday you're going to lose a tight, maybe like 2-1 game. Your bats are just not going to get the job done, I don't think, against this type of pitcher. And then we'll see what happens against the bullpen. And then Saturday, McCoy on the mound. I'm with you, man. I think South Carolina wins game 2 with a really nice performance from Jake. What happened last week was kind of inexcusable in a way of where, Maneri talked about it after the game and even like the following day on Sunday that when South Carolina had that 7-run inning in the third, he went up to Jake and kind of asked him, do you want to play catch outside to kind of stay loose and stuff? And Jake basically declined. And, it was kind of a lazy move, if you will, to where it's like, what happens if you can't go back out on the mound after a 40-plus half inning and, expect to be fine without throwing a little bit. I mean, I think that's standard procedure. So I think Jake, with the type of mentality he has, he's going to bounce back really well and have a great outing on Saturday. I don't think there's any better pitcher in the SEC on a Saturday. So I think South Carolina wins game 2. And then Sunday's really a toss-up, man. I think if SQ pitches really well, like he definitely can, you have a chance to win. Just a matter of whether the bats get enough runs, or you get an SQ start where it's shaky, walks, and a team like Oklahoma will take advantage of those mistakes. So I am going to go with South Carolina winning the series. I think the bats are going to get the jobs done in games 2 and 3, but game 1 is going to be tough. And then, man, Sunday, if SQ doesn't have his best stuff, if he's giving up a few runs, I don't know what to expect. So could go either way, but I'm leaning South Carolina winning 2 of 3.
Yeah, no, I mean, Friday you're hoping for an Ethan Petrie game, against a top tier starter like that. You're hoping your best player, and who I think is probably the best player on the field, most times he walks out there, is the best player on the field. He has one of those games where, Carry-On gets on, Hall gets on, and then he comes up and hits a 3-run bomb, and you're up. You win the game 3-1. That's kind of the recipe if you can steal game 1. But yeah, no, I think they play a good enough brand of baseball that they're going to be in these tight games, and I think they're experiencing the tight games. They haven't had a ton of blowout games, so I think you get used to playing in these type of games to where you know how to react. I haven't seen Oklahoma's box scores, but I don't think they've played in a ton of tight games this year. I think they've won pretty comfortably throughout. So being able to be going on the road and playing a team that does the little things well can frustrate a team like that. So I think they can frustrate them enough, and they'll pull out. They'll come out of the series, and they'll kind of mark themselves on the map of, hey, we're a team to be respected in this conference. We've done this before. We've got veterans, and we are to be respected. They're not going to be feared even if they go out there and sweep Oklahoma this weekend. They don't get the name tag of being able to be feared yet, but they go out there and win the series. I definitely think they should be somebody that should be respected throughout the conference.
Totally, man. Like if they were to win this series and then go to Arkansas, win that series somehow, again, it's all very tough to predict because every weekend in the SEC, anything can happen. If South Carolina lost both these series, wouldn't shock me. If they won both these series, wouldn't shock me. Actually, the Arkansas series would probably shock me a little bit more since it's on the road. Yeah. But nothing's going to come easy, man. Like, it's going to be a gauntlet. You have Oklahoma this weekend, Arkansas next week on the road, the defending champs, Tennessee, coming here at the end of the month, and then you get into what I think is going to be the toughest stretch, back-to-back weekends on the road, Mississippi State, and then Texas A&M. We'll see how it goes, man. It's a long 30-game stretch, but South Carolina with pitching and defense, they can be in any series. And speaking of which, got a question here again from Big Red. Talk about pitching, but is catcher big in making pitchers successful? Is chemistry a big deal between pitcher and catcher? You know this better than anyone. What's your thoughts?
Big time. There's a reason that some big leaguers have personal catchers. There's just certain guys feel comfortable with other guys, and being able to have and I think Coach Rooney's done a real good job of kind of helping these catchers along with calling games. But when you have a kind of intuitive catcher who can make that decision, it's like, okay, I'm going to, we're setting this batter up this way, and kind of have that intuition of when to make a pitch and change, or not pitch and change, but a pitch and mound visit. I think those things are big. So yeah, no, having a good catcher can make a average pitcher above average, and can really make a great pitcher, the best on the field that day.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely massive this weekend, and we will see what happens. It's going to be a lot of fun seeing how the series goes. First SEC series. There's obviously going to be some nerves in the air probably, but once you get the first pitch out of the way, it's just baseball. So we will see what happens, and we will be breaking down. Well, I'll be breaking down the series on Sunday, and then we'll start looking into Arkansas next week. And I just saw this on Twitter. I thought I'd bring it up before we get out of here. Tomorrow, Gamecock Baseball will post this on their Twitter. Tomorrow, gates open at 5:30 tomorrow. That's different from the usual 6 o'clock time. Rally towels are being given away. And then look at this dope T-shirt, man. Pulmonary T-shirt.
I love it. I love it.
So first, what is it? The first 500 fans get that Pulmonary T-shirt. So hopefully people show up, man. It's SEC baseball. I know that South Carolina is not blowing out every team they played to some people's expectations, but man, they keep winning baseball games, and that's all that matters. If you win the series this weekend, you start getting people hooked.
Guys, and I can't, as a former player who's pitched on I was lucky enough to pitch Friday night in relief game 1 of the SEC my freshman year. It means so much with you guys out there. So, I implore, if you are able to get to the game, get out there, make yourself heard. The guys appreciate it. The guys really feed off of it. So, it's going to be a great weekend. It's going to be a great, SEC season. Coach Maneri's got me fired up, talking about treating every weekend series like a super regional. You have to in this conference. And I'm jacked. I'm real excited about watching the guys, go out there and, hopefully, win a series.
It's going to be massive, man. We'll see what happens, and we'll be ready to talk about it throughout the rest of the season. So that's going to do it for us for now. Again, South Carolina, 3-game series, Oklahoma in town this weekend. So for Ethan Carter, I'm Jack Veltri. Take it easy, guys. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.